Now, you're one of the first people who began to write in a serious and informed way about the question of 2012 more than a decade ago.
Mhm.
What first attracted you to this subject? What were you studying? What were you looking at that drew you into this orbit?
Well, I think going back even 25 years ago when I undertook my first trip to Central America, I was attracted to the Native American spirituality. And it seemed to me that there was something inside of this spirituality that was fundamentally different from what was being offered in Western Occidental traditions. And it had to do with the essence of things. And so the Maya tradition, to me, as I got more involved in studying it, seemed to have great insight into reality. To me, it sort of offered an alternative to what one can find in Western philosophy. In some ways, Maya time philosophy is akin to the great teachings of Oriental mysticism because it focuses on the underlying essence behind the scenes. And I think that, now that we have all this urgency around 2012 and it's really on the radar in a big way, I think that this can be a time when we can access this profound spiritual wisdom, what's called the perennial philosophy, this profound understanding of time, cycles, and consciousness. And in my research into the Maya tradition, it seems like the Maya had really perfected and understood these things to a very, very profound degree.
People today speak of the Maya as a lost civilization, a vanished civilization. In your experience, is there still a Maya civilization?
There is indeed a Maya civilization. It's sort of gone into hiding, you might say. The surface details have changed. There's been this process by which the Maya cultures and groups throughout Mexico and Central America have adopted the details of Christianity, for example, which is actually a testimony to their great spirit. They recognized within Christianity elements or reflections of their own spiritual beliefs, and so they easily embraced Christianity. But deeper down, the Maya still do preserve their own essential understandings and spiritual teachings.
One of the things that I think I pick up from your work is that we today have this polarity about 2012. On one hand, you have some people in the spiritual culture who are excessively credulous and make declarations on the internet and other places that this involves some sort of apocalypse, or they quote Mayan writings and philosophies that don't actually exist historically, pointing to this very Nostradamus-like clarity about 2012 that doesn't exist. On the other end of the spectrum, you have materialist academics who just wave their hands and say, it is nothing but the turn of a calendar page. It's meaningless other than that.
Yeah.
You're trying to chart a completely different path in your work.
Right, right.
How do you see those two camps? Where do they fall short?
Well, this is really the subject of a great deal of what I covered in my new book, The 2012 Story, because I find it interesting how the media and the marketplace is setting this up underneath this kind of false polarity, where you have the 2012 debunkers who are saying that it's all 100% meaningless, which in itself is kind of curious because 2012 is a true artifact of the tradition, so it has some meaning of some kind. You can't simply dismiss it as being a hoax or something like that. So on a certain level, the 2012 debunkers need to be debunked. And then on the other hand, you have the media setting up usually the silliest manifestations in the inventive community around 2012. And there's a lot of creative, inventive stuff happening around this, very little of which has anything to do with the Maya tradition. So with this false polarity, there's really no place yet for the kind of serious investigations that I've been doing for a number of years. And now there's really a revolution taking place on the fringes of academic scholarship, in which there is now a recognition that there is something very interesting inside of this 2012 thing, something that's embedded deep within Maya astronomy, science, and spiritual teachings. And So on one hand, the scholars, the professional Maya scholars, really should be doing their jobs, in a sense, to investigate how 2012 plays a role inside of Maya traditions. You know, that's how progress occurs. And then on the other hand, you have in the New Age spiritual community this sense that there's something that we need to understand on a spiritual level. What is the spiritual teaching for 2012? And in fact, you find this as well in the Maya creation mythology. So the whole package is really there, but we just have this kind of false dichotomy that's being set up. And I think this is almost part of the process. You know, when we have clearly defined dichotomies, then that's when things can be united and we can move beyond. It's like the path through.
The path through. That to me is the great thing about your work. The New Age community has the correct impulse in that they're searching for meaning. They understand that there's something more to life than what we see. But it seems to me that in your work, you're saying to them, yes, I share that impulse, but I want you to go back to the tradition. Educate yourself about the tradition.
And go deep within. We need to recognize the thing in itself and go deep within and have our own inner experience with the essential spiritual principles that lie at the root of the Maya tradition. Because a lot of what's happening in the popular community writing about 2012 is kind of irrational fantasies and creative models and systems and so on, which distracts us from really looking clearly at the thing in itself.
John, how are the Mayan people themselves preparing, if in any way, for winter solstice 2012?
Oh, well, that's a good question. As I mentioned earlier, the long count calendar and the 2012 date is one of the aspects of the calendar tradition that has been forgotten. So it needed to be reconstructed. And it's a bit of a touchy issue because there are traditional Maya leaders that have been exposed to 2012 information, but a lot of it's been through exposure to some of the pop manifestations. So there's a bit of confusion as to what it's about. However, the essence of this, because it involves a cycle ending, the Maya are, in a sense, embracing this idea of transformation and renewal for their own culture. So there's really a kind of a Maya renaissance taking place in Guatemala and other parts of Mesoamerica where the Maya are, in a sense, using 2012 as a trigger point to reestablish their own independence.
I've been told that one of the most popular cable television documentaries of the last year has been Nostradamus and 2012.
Okay, yeah.
So once and for all, is there any connection between the prophet Nostradamus and the year 2012?
I don't believe there is. This is really just a funny example of how we tend to filter the whole 2012 topic through our preconceived ideas about, like, say, what prophecy is supposed to be about. And in this Nostradamian kind of view, you gaze into a crystal ball and you see specific things about the future. Well, that's kind of a superficial way to understand prophecy. I think prophecy really is kind of like an evocation. It's like an envisioning of possible futures. And one can choose to envision a most positive future or a more negative future. And that would be what the prophets of doom are doing with 2012.
Well, thank you very much, John.
Oh, thank you.